My name is Suman Yadav and I'm a research scholar of MPhil History at Ambedkar University, Delhi. I would like to thank first of all Shodhsamvad-Research Forum, School of International Studies, JNU and Nehru Memorial Museum and Library for providing me this platform to present my work on research methodology. So the title of my paper is Oral History and Narratives, Methodology that Unfolds New Pages in History. So basically this paper highlights the significance of oral history methodology used by many historians to bring out the less explored narratives which are hidden behind the popular narratives of history, and how recently this methodology has been used by many scholars to rewrite the significant events in history from a different perspective. In this way, this paper focuses on the use of oral history methodology in exploring the event of partition and migration accompanied by mass violence and genocide, which is quite difficult to study only through the documents and archival sources. So first I would like to discuss about the significance of oral history methodology, and then moves on to as how this methodology has created a research trend in modern Indian history. So the contribution of oral history methodology in the reconstruction of history has been widely acknowledged. Oral history or personal narratives has not only enabled historians to unlock the experiences of people who were marginalized within the master narratives, but it has also played a significant role in shifting and changing the pattern of the way history has been written or studied by historians. For example, Louis M. Starr in his paper Oral History Methodology, The Art of Interviewing, highlights that oral historians documents the past by preserving insights that are unavailable in printed sources. And the interview process practiced by oral historians afford participants or the people who experience those historical events an opportunity to address the historical record directly, to clarify what they see as misconceptions in third-person accounts, to discuss their own motives and those of other participants, and to provide their own personal assessment of the significance of the event in which they took part in. This approach makes possible a clearer understanding of the intent of the participants that could be inferred from a record of the events alone. He further mentions that oral history methodology is based on a number of academic disciplines like history, sociology, anthropology, law and psychology, etc. And each of these disciplines has contributed important insight into the art of interviewing and has enriched the method used by oral historians. Their interview style contains a number of strengths and weaknesses. So oral history methodology in Louis' paper, however, present an interdisciplinary approach with a very pre-designed formal procedure followed in an interview, which may be possible to follow in other disciplines, but when it's come to bring out the unheard voices of people marginalized in history, such strict procedure becomes a little difficult to follow, as historians sometimes let the narrator or interviewee to narrate his or her experiences of the past event without much interruption that could disturb his or her flow of memory. For a historian, the use of interview technique in oral history is significant not to record a formal interview with formal procedures and questions, but to record and listen to the experiences of people who eyewitnessed and sometimes experienced the violence and atrocities occurred in the past events, which was not found in many of the archival records or documents created or collected by government or officials. Here the significance of oral history methodology comes where a historian, no doubt, consider the written material as a significant base for his or her research that helps him to raise questions and to observe the gaps in the previous study of the past events. Oral history methodology then helped the historians to fill those gaps and unfold those pages in history that were unnoticed before. Now I would like to discuss how oral history as a research methodology has created a trend to study the history of partition of India from a different angle and constructing the partition's history from beneath. In order to discuss this, it is significant to highlight the works of scholars who use this research methodology to recreate the partition history from a diverse and a fresh perspective, along with my own research outcome through this methodology. One of the most significant scholars who applied oral history methodology to reconstruct and explore the partition violence or atrocity is none other than Urvashi Butalia. Her work titled The Other Side of Silence has not only created a trend to study the partition history from a feminist perspective, but also collected the experiences of those who survived violence during partition. This work of Putalia, largely based on personal narratives, reveals the hidden pain and atrocities suffered by women, children, low caste and ordinary people in Punjab region during the partition. Her work includes the personal narratives of victims and survivors that she collected over a period of 10 years. Her work is a significant contribution to oral history as well as to the unfolding of women narratives hidden behind silences. She has brought the experiences of women to the force and exposed the harsh realities of abduction, rape, violence against women in a patriarchal society. However, she believes that oral history is a methodological tool that many oral as well as feminist historians have found enormously empowering, as it offers a different way to look at history. She writes, I'm quoting, "No historical document can approximate their pain and anguish. None can reflect their trauma or even begin to understand their confusion or ambivalence. In most historical accounts of partition, people are just numbers, or else they are that terrible word, informants, mere such source of information. But for me, in my study of partition, it is the people I spoke to who are an integral part of the history of partition. It is they who lives are the history of partition." So her work reflects how in research, oral history methodology can help individuals and societies remember and make better sense of traumatic past. The fact of any event are important, recognizes Butalia, but equally important is how people remember those facts and how they represent them. Another significant work based on oral narratives and first-hand account of Punjabi refugees resettled in Delhi has been done by scholar Ravinder Kaur. Her work titled Since 1947, Partition Narrative Among Punjabi Migrants of Delhi include the interview and accounts of upper caste Punjabi refugees resettled in Delhi and how their lives have been transformed over a period of time. And this transformation can be reflected from their memories and narratives. She mentions, as a methodology, when one engaged with a given problematic on the plane of memory, the space thus created occupies previously unmarked area between the past and present. This becomes more acute when memory is extracted not from documentary sources but from survivors who become the active link between past event and their public recital. According to her, memory making is clearly the first step in the production of narratives. The personal experience of catalyst of violence and forced migration forms the raw material that later takes the shape of narratives. Thus, various pieces of one's memory are joined to produce a fluent account and narrative. Apart from this, I have also used and applied this research methodology in my research study on scheduled caste refugees. I also believe that oral history methodology not only shifts our attention from the previously done studies in history, but has also created a new trend in research that motivates scholars to go beyond the already established knowledge and reconstruct the past from a new and fresh perspective. The only difference in the use of this methodology in my research is that I have not only conducted interviews of scheduled caste refugees who experienced the event of partition, but significantly focuses on the local people of those areas in Delhi where these scheduled caste refugees were resettled by government, which reveals how these local people contributed their share by helping these empty-handed refugees, providing them food, clothes, and necessary items. The account of local people also reflects the drastic change in the life of scheduled caste refugees who had nothing when they arrived in Delhi from Pakistan and helped by government through jobs and accommodation. But now many of these refugees have become rich and changed their identities and even settled in other cities. Here the significance of oral methodology can be seen as such kind of information can only be collected through interviews and discussion with people. But it should also keep in mind that in order to get more information from people, the sample or structured questionnaire sometimes becomes less useful because it becomes crucial for researchers to give them, the interviewees, the liberty to speak in whichever direction they wanted to take the conversation without much interruption. So while concluding, I can say that oral history methodology has developed over past few decades and so has the scholarship and literature to oral history. The physical sharing of oral tradition or history is 1,000-year-old, but the methodological, theoretical, and scholarship aspect of this method are relatively new. Oral history can be utilized in any field and draws upon a number of other disciplines mentioned earlier. Also, narrative sources are not easy to work with and can be very challenging. Collecting the oral histories, listening to the narratives, reading and coding them into transcript displayed the importance of helping others share and interpret their own personal narratives. Without the use of oral history, narratives and memory, the historical perspective of race, labor history, feminism, military culture, violence, ethnicity, and much more would not be a part of any historical conversations. In spite of this, this methodology has been severely criticized. Traditional documentary historians have questioned the veracity of truthfulness of this oral testimony, both because of faulty remembrances and the influence of contemporary events that inevitably have an impact on how and what is remembered. Memory after a long period of time becomes influenced by other events and interpretation and could be clouded by age. By acknowledging this, scholar Grail argues that oral history must be used with critical eye and it must be evaluated with care. He remarks that when methodology of oral history are used with care, they increase our understanding of past and reveal hidden level of discourses. Thank you so much.